During the last session, we were discussing about the CSS, and I have told you what is CSS and the basis to design the CSS. Also, during the last session, I told you that the CSS actually follows the inheritance. In the last class, I've told you that if you look at a HTML document, consider any HTML document, we start with the HTML, and inside that we write head, and then inside this head we may write the title, and these things will continue. After that, at the same level we start body, and then we put some tags like div and so on. So now these are going to end there, okay? And finally these things will end. Now, if you look at this HTML, and if you represent an HTML in the form of a tree, this is how it's going to appear. So the root will be HTML. Inside that there is a head and there is a body, and inside a head we have a title, and we may have meta tags and so on and so forth. And inside the body we have h1, h2, and maybe div and so on and so forth. So that forms a hierarchy. The HTML always lies at the top or the root of the tree, and the head as well as the body are the immediate child of it, and so on. Now, if you look at the head and body, there is a relationship between the HTML and head and body. These are the children of the HTML. If you look at the other elements which are there, all of them are the descendant of HTML. So there is two types of relationship which are there. We'll look at them slightly later. In the sense, we will look at them how to what is the significance of them. So if you have an element that is contained within the other element, for example, here we have the bold and italic being part of the paragraph, then we say that the P is the parent of B and I, as well as H1 and H2 are the child or the children of the body. So it's a parent-child relationship. Whereas if you take this B and I, they are not the immediate children; they are the grandchildren of the body. In that case, we say just descendant. So we have a relationship, the descendant or the parent relationship. Now, what's the significance of this is, if you apply a style to the parent, the child or the descendant automatically inherit that style. So, if I apply a style to the body, automatically it is taken up by the H1 and H2 tag as well as the P and D tag. So this is what is the meaning of saying inheritance. It automatically is given to its children. Okay. Now, if you look at a relationship over here, we will notice that this body here is given a color red. None of the other elements are given a color red, but because all of them are the descendant or the children of the body in some or other form, they automatically inherit from. So this is the advantage here is you apply the general color or general style to the parent element and the specific style to the child element. The advantage here is you don't have to clutter the style information, or you don't have to give the style information, every style information to every element. If you know that the same style has to be applied throughout, then go to the parent element and give the general style, and then go to the other element, the child element or the descendant, and give the specific style. So when the style is applied, both the parent as well as the child styles are merged together, and if you are overriding or if you want to override any of the parent style, then redeclare it again. So suppose if you say the body here is red, and if you don't want the body to be red for this one, just override the color red and supply some other colors. From that point onwards, the color will change. So this is how we can use the selectors. The other one that I've already shown you in the last class, and that is we can have multiple selectors within one row. Now, if you look at one declaration over here, I have H1, H2, H3. If I want to have the same font family for all of them, I can separate them or I can group them together with a comma separation and then apply the rules. This will be applied to all the H1 to H6 stack immediately. So I don't have to declare a rule for H1 separately, a rule for H2 separately, and H3, and so on and so forth. I can take all of them, club them as a single selector, and then use it. Now, what will happen if you start overriding it? Now, if you look at a rule here, you notice that there is H1, H2, H3, and we have a font family and color. After that, again, H3 is repeating here. So H3 is given a color pink here. In previously it was given a color red. Now, which color will be shown? The rule is the last one will override it. Now, in this case, the last one to be red, if you are reading it from top to bottom, the last one will be H3, and because H3 is red last, the color for that H3 will be in pink. The pink color here will override the red color that was declared previously. There is the other selector, which this is a special type of selector, and that is called as the universal selector, and it is given a symbol star. Star applies to everything. Suppose if you want to apply a rule for everything, any element for that matter, then you start with the star and then apply the rule. So this is called as universal selector. Star means anything. So in this case, if you say color is blue, that means any element you start automatically will get the color blue. What if you don't want the color to be blue for a specific element? In that case, write or declare the rules for that specific element and maybe change the color if you don't like to use the color. Okay, so this is what I have shown you. Let's go to the next one, and that is the contextual selector. Now, this is slightly different. If you want to apply a color for a specific child of a given parent, this is called as contextual selector. So, if you want a rule to be applied only for the children of a particular parent, then you give the relationship as parent space descendant, and then apply the apply the style. Now, what is in this case? If you notice there, you have this li and b. What is the li? Again, if you recall in the previous class, we have created the ordered list, and within the ordered list, I told you every element will be, so let me say NCA, and then this is the ordered list. Just quickly write that. Now this is the ordered list. Now li is the element. Now how is it going to appear in the screen? If you see that, if you run it, how is it going to appear? So this is going to appear either 1, because it's an ordered list, NDA, and then 2, NCA. This is how it's going to appear when you see it in the browser. Now, what if I want to apply the color for only this element, the element which is a child of OL, not something else? I can do that thing by giving this contextual selector. Now, just to tell you, I'm going to just change this one, and let me write one more tag here. I'm going to start with li. So that's better. Let me slightly put it here, li, and I'm going to use the b here, and then say pgdca, and I will just close this b as well as li. Okay. Then, as usual, I'm going to close this with the thing. I'm going to close this here. Now, in this case, the B will the PGDC will come in bold. I can show that bold here. PGDCA. Okay. This will appear in bold. Now, I want to apply a color only for PGDC. Now, how do I do that? I will say that a list element somewhere has B inside it. If you find a B inside Li, then apply this color. That's the meaning of it. So B must be inside Li. Suppose in your page you may have a bold, you may have div here, and inside you may have B with some text inside it. This will not be taken up. This B is not qualifying because here I'm telling you that it must be a B that is a descendant of Li. It can be a child of it, or it may be somewhere within that. Okay, you may have a something of this type, Li. Then you may have a paragraph. Then you may have a B. Then some text. It's going to work. Okay. So inside Li you have a paragraph. Then you have a bold. It's going to work fine. In other words, I'm saying that the B must be a descendant of Li. If you find something of that type, then use it. Let's look at the example here. Now I'm saying here is in this case again, I want to apply color red to all the bold elements, provided they are part of the paragraph. So let's look at this example over here. Isn't that we have a hierarchy like this? We have a body tag. Inside body we have a paragraph that immediately has a bold. Then that paragraph has a span. Then inside this there is a bold as well as a paragraph has direct bold. All of them will come in red color because all of them are the descendant of B. So this B is a descendant. Although it's a child, but it's still a descendant. This B is also a descendant, even though it's not a direct child, but it is a grandchild. It's going to work fine. Whereas here it's the direct child. So this is how we specify the parent and the space descendant followed by the root. The next one is what if I want to select immediate child. If you want to select only the child, not the grandchild. In this case, if you notice there, this is a grandchild, but the previous one will even take up this one. Now, what if I don't want that thing? I can use greater than symbol. I can use the child selector. That is the greater than symbol. When you use this, what is going to happen? What's the difference here is the B, which was a descendant, not a direct child, will not be taken up. So I still want to make a red color, but not to any descendant, only the immediate child. So this you can have a kind of selector. Now the next one is the adjacent selector, and the adjacent selectors are specified by a plus symbol in between. So I am saying here is B must be followed by I. They must be adjacent to each other. If you find it, apply the font size as 8 font. So that is again a different types of selector. You can say that if both of them are together, apply it. If you find a bold and something else, not immediately adjacent to it, if you have some other element after that, if italic comes, that will not qualify it. Okay. So let's look at some other example. I will quickly go through it. The first one is a very straightforward example wherein we have group of elements and we are applying this one. If you notice over here, here also I have a comma separation. You must be able to distinguish between both of them. This part is group. This, if you inside the rule, if you put a comma, it means say that any one has to be used. If the Arial is not there, then it is sans serif. First preference is for Arial. If you can't find a Arial family, then go for the sans serif. The next one is we have so many elements here. All of them, if you notice, they are not related to each other. We have a paragraph, we have a table, we have a list item, address, and so on and so forth. They are not related to each other. Still, they can be grouped together, and you can apply more than one rule. That is also allowed. So, for a group, you can apply many rules. Again, let's look at the other one. In this other case, this is again, I think I've started giving you one example there, then I got stuck in between. Wherein the size is specified as 80%, not in font. So you're saying within the container, 80% of the container, the font must occupy that size. The next one is to specify a color. When you have this color, you can have, I think I have already told you, there are many ways in which you can supply the values, and it depends on what element you are using. For color, you can specify it in a hexadecimal format. You can specify it with the direct color. There are names that can, there are valid names like a keyword. You can apply them for the color, and it's going to work fine. For example, saddle brown is given, dark is given, and so on and so forth. Now, if you notice over here, this is a very strange behavior here. Now, if you have a hyperlink, you know very well. I have shown you one example of the hyperlink. When I hover on the hyperlink, I wanted to change the color, and that can be done using a pseudo selector. Now, what does this say is A is the anchor, and when some condition is satisfied within that anchor, this particular rule has to be applied. So, for example, if you have a anchor that is a hyperlink, and if somebody hovers on that hyperlink, I want this rule to be applied. If the mouse pointer is not on top of it, then just show the darkened color. If it is visited again, make it dark. If it is an active, not yet visited, then show it in the red color. So these are applicable for a specific, within a specific scenario or within a specific situation. So all of them are applied to the anchor tag, but at a given situation, one of them will be active, and that is the way in which you can supply the pseudo tags. We will look at the pseudo selectors slightly later. The next one is slightly complicated, and that is we specify the attribute. Now here, if you notice this example, I am saying that there may be many tables within my document. If you find a table that has this property border specified, but you know very well, I think morning I have not shown you that. When you create a table, tag, there is an attribute called as border. If you specify border is equal to 1, and then you can go ahead with the entire table. Now, if you may have one table like this, again you may have one more table that does not make use of the border. In the morning session, I used this table, and I never specified an attribute called as border. Now, if you want to apply a style to all those tables which has a property called as border that is specified. For example, here border is not specified. Only those tables which have the border, maybe you want to just change the color of a border or something of that type. In that case, you can say that the table that has a property border, select this style has to be applied to only those tables that has a border along with it. Now, if you want, you can again fine tune it and then say that if the border style is 0, then apply it. So there must be a attribute border, and there must be a specific value that is assigned. So in this case, this rule is not applicable for the given table over here, because the given table has a border, no doubt. There is this property, but the value of it is 1. But the rule says this particular rule, that is shown there, isn't that there are some rules there? That rule has to be applied to only those tables that has a border plus some specific value that is assigned to it. So this is again some complicated selector. So the next one that we are saying is, instead of directly using the element in the selector, we can have an ID. Now the ID is used to identify or uniquely distinguish one element from the other. So whenever you are using an ID, you must always remember that ID has to be used only once, and if you repeat the ID, then the notion of the IDs itself will fail. The IDs are meant to uniquely identify a element. If two elements have the same ID, then it is not possible to uniquely identify them. It's like your register number. If your register number starts repeating, then it is not possible for us to assign a mark, or it is not possible for anybody to give a pinpoint to that one particular person. So the ID, whenever you are using the ID, you must say to it that you are not repeating. In a given page, you are not repeating it. Somewhere in the other pages, if the IDs are repeating, it's all right. So when it builds one DOM structure, ID should not be repeated. Now, how do you specify a ID? To specify a ID, you give the ID and the name. ID equal to name in the beginning. Now, how do I use it in the CSS? In order to use it in the CSS, we use if the ID is given a name as ID name, use the number sign followed by the style rule. Now, if you use this, it just means to say that any element that has this ID has to be used. However, let's look at the other way around. If you look at this example here, you notice that P followed by the ID. What's the meaning of saying P followed by the ID is, if the ID is given to a div, or if this ID is given to a table, then this rule cannot be applied. So this rule has to be applied to all those paragraphs whose ID is important. If a table gets an ID as important, the same one, this rule is not applicable. So here you are combining the element along with its ID. In other words, you are filtering out the other possibilities. So when you apply an important image, if you just apply this important can be used by anyone. So in one of the page, the important may be assigned to a table. Next time it may be assigned to a div. Third time it may be assigned to something else. Now, if you want to be very specific, if this important is associated with a paragraph tag, then you want to make it as italic, you can use that. So that is more of a specific type. Okay. So this is just a simple example. You have a paragraph with an ID head, and how do you use it within your CSS? Within your CSS, you start with the head, give the different rules, and then start using it. The next one is the classes. The main use of the class is to reuse. Suppose if you want to reuse the same style again and again for different elements, then you can think of doing it. Again, if you want to have the same set of rules for multiple elements, you can use that thing. So let's look at a simple example. In the lab, you are already familiar. If you want to create a class, you just say start the element class followed by the name that you want to give, and then start using it with the dot. Whereas you can do the same thing, a very specific one, p dot important. That means to say that a paragraph that has a class and then these things. Okay, so here this is specific. If any element gets the fine print as a tag, it can be applied. Whereas in this case, it must be applicable only to a paragraph that has a class important, and I think you are already familiar by now. Class is shown with a dot. So the difference between ID and class: ID starts with the number sign, class with a dot. So this is an example in full. We have a class, say header, and then we start using that class over here. Then I am not very sure whether you'll be able to see it. So if you notice over here, first of all, we have two classes in the CSS. Fruit with the red color, vegetable with the green color. In the HTML, we have the unordered list, and one of the lists is given a name fruit. Then the next one is vegetable, and so on and so forth. It is interchanged. What is the result? So whenever it is the class is fruit, it will apply the red color, and that is what we are going to see. If the element has a class vegetable, it's going to use the color green, and that is what we are going to see it over here. Okay. So this is how it's going to render. So you are giving the class once and reusing it again and again. What's the difference between this and the ID? If you have created an ID, then it can be used only once. If you start repeating it, then everything will fail altogether. Okay. I think I won't waste time in explaining it again and again. So let's go to the last part, and what's the difference between a class property and an ID property. This could be one of the questions, maybe for 2 marks or other thing. You can't have more than one tag with the same ID value. So you have a element, and if you are given a tag name, the same tag can be used, but in the class it is all allowed. The next part is how can I apply this style. I've demonstrated it in the lab, so it is much easier for you to understand now. The styles can be applied in 3 ways. One is inline style, next one is the embedded style, the third one is the external style. What is the meaning of saying inline style? The style is applied to a very specific element. You take a paragraph and immediately apply a style, then that is applicable only for that particular paragraph. That is called as inline. What is embedded within the HTML document? Inside the head part, you write the style, and that is embedded. What is external? You save the style information on a separate page and then link that page along with the HTML page. So how do I specify the inline style? Give the element name, put the attribute as style, give the style declaration. For example, H1, then put the style and then specify the style. The rule must be in the same order. You start the name here and value, key value pair, and it must be separated by a semicolon. It's one and the same. What about the embedded style? If you want to have an embedded style, inside the head, specify style and /style. Then in order to tell the browser that it is a style that you are applying, you specify that type of it is CSS, text/CSS. It's not required in the HTML5 version. The older version, this line is required. After that, you will specify the selectors as usual. To show it as an example, style type is text.css. This part is really not required in the HTML5 version. You can just say style and then start using it, because it is known that whenever somebody says style, it is essentially CSS. After that, you give the declaration. H1 should look like this, H2 should look like this, and so on and so forth. And then you use them within your document. So here I just said H1. So that means to say that whenever somebody types H1 tag, automatically it will get the gold color, and it will be right aligned, and it will have the sans serif. Again, you can combine them. It's one and the same. I don't have to repeat it again and again. So the full selection example that you have, we have an HTML document, and within the head section, there is a style. This part is not required, but I'm putting it. So there is no harm in putting that thing. Nobody said that you're not supposed to use it. They said that it is optional. You don't like it, you don't use it. So, apply style, green, apply one more style, apply one more style. The reason why these things are shown is, you notice the strange thing. The color, I told you, there are many ways in which you can apply color. The first one is the name that is given green. Second one is the hexadecimal code. And again, if you find out what is it all about, it's a hexadecimal number, and the first number refers to the R part. The second one is the G part, and the third one is the B part. So red, the percentage or the composition of red, the composition of green, and the composition of blue. The combination of them will produce this color. You can use a function called as RGB and then specify it. So 0% red, 0% green, and 255, that is the total 100% of blue, and it's going to appear in dark blue color. So this is how it's going to appear. You may find it slightly different because there is a background. The background is just there to show you that this is how it's going to appear. You notice that the style is applied in this place. Within the head section, the style is applied. And I have applied the style for H here, H1. Whenever I use H1 from now onwards, it will appear in this style. Whenever I use H2, it's going to appear in this style. Whenever I use P, it's going to appear in this style. If I don't like to get the paragraph in blue color, what is that I am supposed to do? In this case, I have to go here and apply inline style to this to override it. So if I want it to appear in green color, I have to say that at this place, after this paragraph, I have to say that style equal to, then specify, let's say color is say red, and then follow it with the other part. So this is how it can be used. Last one is the external. External style sheet is you place all the rules on a separate file. So you take a different document altogether, file altogether, place all the file rules in the new document and save it as anyname.css. So that means this files are completely outside the HTML document, whereas in the previous case they were within the HTML document. So if you try to do it, what is the advantage? Advantage is the same rules can be applied again and again to many different documents. So for the entire website, you create a style document and reuse those styles again and again within the document. Suppose if you create a header tag here, suppose if I create like this, number sign and say ABC, and then apply some rules here. Assuming that I have applied the rule. Now I can go here and then I can start a paragraph P here and then say that ID equal to ABC. It's going to work fine. I can go to this document and I can start a div and I can give an ID as ABC. This is going to work fine. Even though this, I told you that the ID must be unique. ID is unique in this document. ID is unique in the other document. The document as a whole is one unit. So even though the same ID is used, but they are not used within the same document. They are used in a different document. It's valid. So within the document you can't reuse the ID, but elsewhere you can reuse. So you can use you can have the formatting in one of the documents and then combine it with the other HTML document. How do I combine the style sheet, external style sheet with my HTML document? The way in which you do it is in the head section, you use a tag link and specify the href, which is the URL of the style sheet. Then specify the relationship. This is a must. Even in the HTML5 version, this is a must. Okay. Whereas the last one, MIME type, is not really required. If you want to use it, the MIME for this is text/CSS. Whether you use it or not in the newer version of HTML, this will not make any difference. Whereas this entire tag will not make a difference. This is a must in order for the browser to understand that the relationship between the resource that is imported into the document is a style sheet. The reason is that you may import a JavaScript and the browser must be able to understand that this is JavaScript that is coming in. Okay. Let's assume that you have the styles which are there, okay, and you have an HTML document, and I assume that the name of that document is my style. So in the head section, you have to say link, href, my style, and all this thing. I have not shown there because there is no space. And then because the body has a style, automatically this will come in this style here. Because H1 has a style, automatically it will come. because there is a class called as shaded, that information will be automatically, that formatting is automatically applied. You can have one more document that can also have it. So in general, in a very short format, this is how we represent it. So we have a style sheet, we have a link. Again, the order in which you write this attribute is not defined. You can have the editor first, related next, type next. You can go for any possibilities, but the things must be there. That's the only thing, and they must be separated by a space. Whether this must come first or whether this must come first, there is no ordering for that. You can write it in any order. Okay. If you notice over here, we have a style, external style sheet. We have a embedded style sheet. We also, we also have a inline style. Which one will be applied in this case? If you have a external embedded as internal, there is a rule that governs it. And what is the rule? The rule is the browser default is applied first. What's the meaning of saying browser default? If you have created a web page in your DCA, you were not aware of this CSS. So you were not giving any styles to any of the elements. But then the browser was showing it. How the browser was showing it is, the browser has a built-in style, and it uses that style when nothing is specific. When you say H1, it will show it in a larger font, and the size of the font name, everything is the default behavior of the browser. So if nothing is specified, it will go to the browser default. If an external is specified, that will override the browser default. So browser default has all the possibilities. If you want to override some of them, put an external. Again, if you put an internal style sheet, that is the embedded one, it will override what was there in the external. If there is an inline, it will override all of them. So I think I've already told you in the previous class. The nearest one or the most recently applied will win the race always. Okay, that means to say that the one that is inline always wins the rule. Wins the race. Now, if you look at the example over here, in the external, X3 is given some rules. In the internal, it is given. What is the combination? If you notice over here, X3 color is specified, but in the internal, color is not specified. So at the end, what will happen? Because X3 has a color, the color will be carried forward because there is no override. Whereas in the external, alignment is left, but in the internal, alignment is right. Because internal is nearer to the external, internal will win, and you are going to get the alignment as right. And here, point size is 8 points in the external, point size is 20 in the internal. Internal wins, so you get the 20 points. So this is what happens. If it is there and if it is not overridden in the next stage, that means that is simply carried forward. Okay. So just to summarize, inline overrides the embedded style, embedded will override the external, external will override the browser default. Okay. If anyone, for any of them, if you don't specify the inline, internal or external, browser defaults will be used. So I will switch back to the PHP. It's a brief introduction to PHP. I will not be wasting a lot of time on that. So if you look at the way in which we use the application. So this is a 3-tier application. We have a client side, we have a server side, and within the server side we have a server storage tier. Now you may have one more tier that was shown to you in the JSP, that is the application as well as the other. I'm not going to go into that. Now, whenever we say client here, that means to say that something that works at the client machine. The client machine can be a desktop, could be a mobile device, or anything for that matter. In this 3-tier model or 3-tier architecture, we assume that we are going to get the input and the user interaction at the client side. So we assume that this one or this one will not directly interact with the client. So it's like our sales representative. We send the representative to the client side, and client will interact only with the representative. And who are our representatives in our case? They are all the browsers. Okay. So when we develop the HTML pages or when we develop a web page, they are all the browsers which will interact, which will show our page in a neat formatted way, and they will take the input from the client side. Now I just forgot one particular thing. Tomorrow I don't want to show that. So there is a website called as CSS Zen Garden, and this is Internet Explorer. You notice here, that's a site. You can go to that. You can just search for Zen Garden. You can take it to that. This is a showcase for CSS. Now you notice over here, this is a site, very beautiful looking site. This is done using CSS. The whole thing is done using CSS. That's a good part of this thing. Okay, the entire thing is a CSS. There are many are there. Now I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to the developer tools, and in the developer tool, I'm going to go over here, and there is an option for me to, I'll go to this CSS, where is that disable part. I'll go here, and I'm going to say disable my CSS from this page. So I'm saying that there is a CSS associated with this page. I don't want you to show me that CSS, just show me the plain HTML. You notice that plain HTML is that. That's the plain HTML, and just by disabling, you notice that the entire thing is gone. This is the bare minimum HTML that is being shown, and if you apply a CSS, and this is how it is rendered. That's the power of CSS altogether. You can go to this site to learn more about how they did that thing. This entire thing is meant for educating others as to how to use CSS and what you can do with the CSS. It's like a showcase for CSS. There are many other sites. This is most heavily been discussed. If you refer to any books, you will find at least somewhere they will mention Zen Garden as one site. You can go there and say how the sites are designed. And maybe you can use the same template and modify them. Now let me come back to the thing over here. So we have at the client side of the user interface, the client will interact with this one, and this client machine will interact with our server. Our server in turn will interact with the data storage. Okay. This is the simple idea, and normally we have already seen this thing. Even though our client, our server, our database, everything was there on the same machine, but you can imagine your Firefox was the client side, the Apache was at the server side, and MySQL was there at the back side handling the database. Okay, so this is what happens. The client usually interact with the server using the HTTP protocol, hypertext transfer protocol. This is the usual protocol. That does not mean that this is the only protocol that has to be used. There are many other protocols like SMTP for transferring mail, and all of them are called as application level protocol. So sometimes during the interviews, people just ask, can you name any of the application level protocol? You are not able to answer. Now, why this is there? Where did I get that application? Now, in your BCA or BSc, you have studied the OSI model. If you have not studied, refer to them. There are layers here. There are many layers which are there in the OS. How many layers are there? 7 layers are there. The top one is the application layer. The protocols that are used in this layer are called as the application level protocol. One of them is the HTTP. Other one is the SMTP. All of them are their application. Why? They are specific for a given application. They are not general purpose. So that's why they are called as this one. Let's go to the web server. What is the responsibility of the web server? Web server, if you just look at here, it takes the HTTP request, it finds the resources. If it can't find the resources, it will give an error message. If the resource requires some script to be executed, it will execute it via CPI program. Now I'll come back to the CPI slightly later. It's called as common gateway interface. Why it is common, we'll come back to that later. If it finds a resource, it will return that resource to the client side. And the heavily used web server is the Apache. The next one is the IIS is being used. The others are not up to that level. The Apache is the open source server. It runs on almost all platforms, Unix, Mac, as well as the Windows. IIS, Internet Information Server, runs only on Windows platform. Okay? That's why it's not as it doesn't have that kind of mileage as that of the Apache. Others, some of them will work on the Unix, others will not work on Unix, and so on and so forth. But the percentage is very less. These two are the dominant one. One from the Microsoft world, the other one is the Apache. Apache is almost used by 99% of the time you will hit the Apache server. Okay, whether it's a Google, whether it is a Yahoo, whether it is somewhere else, the most heavily tortured web server is the Apache. IIS also comes. IIS is also scalable, but IIS is not for free. That's the reason people don't try to use it. Apache is free, open source. That's why they are using. And your subject title says LAMP, and I think I've already told you the LAMP refers to Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. In your case, it is PHP. The acronym for LAMP also means either PHP or Perl. But we are only using PHP, not the Perl. Linux is the operating system that you studied last semester. Apache, you're just saying, we will not go in depth into it. MySQL